what we think is quite very important is something that is in the Data Governance Act, that is a structural separation between data intermediaries, data stewards, and the organizations that hold and use the data. Because this is how you build truly a new data governance with this new kind of players that are data intermediaries and that are representing the individual. And it is a kind of a new right for an individual to be represented as an individual, as a self-standing individual with all the rights in this general data spaces and data sharing infrastructure. So that's important, I believe, to have this structural separation written in law, like we have in other sectors like banks. With AI coming up, there was great opportunity to bring great personalized services to people, and especially to be able to personalize, let's say, education and opportunities, so that people can really first discover what's truly unique about themselves, be empowered with that, and get in touch with the right opportunities regarding their uniqueness and what makes them, let's say, geniuses in a sense. But in exploring that, one key aspect was that people would absolutely need to control and be empowered with their data. So that first they can put all the data they have to their use and to know what it tells about them, but also to make sure that this very sensitive, very intimate data is used only to what they agree on and to purposes and to objectives that they want, and not to purposes and objectives that other organizations or other people want. So that's why I founded Visions, which is my data operator or a data steward that allows people to manage their consent on their data and to easily share it between different systems with their control, so as to enable this empowerment. The very basic problem is the same as in many sectors, is that data about people's skills, professional experiences, trainings, soft skills, hobbies, etc., are scattered across a lot of organizations, employers, training organizations, several platforms, universities, and so on. And so no single actor has a complete profile and up-to-date and dynamic profile of the person. So, and on the person side, that leads to first a person not having a full, let's say, knowledge of their skills, and not being able to easily put those skills into context with local opportunities. And so one use case we have, working on several layers of the problem, if we take a region in France that we're working with in the north of France that has a lot of young unemployed people, they're a bit far from the classical public services. Well, through the Visions approach, they can be proposed to mutualize data they have in their high schools, in some non-profit work they've been doing, in their sports activities, in maybe some small jobs they did, and share it with a skills platform that would say, oh look, you have those skills, and people don't necessarily know they have those skills, and share it with public players, training organizations, and so on, to say, well, based on those skills, you could do that training, that job, in accordance with that training is recruiting. And by that way, we solve the first problem, that is putting people back in self-confidence of the skills they have and know the skills they have, and also enable the players of employment, of lifelong learning, to interact with those skills, to propose them the right training or job organizations. And that first helps people find a job quicker, helps people in times of crisis move from one job to another, and helps organizations more quickly find the right talent for the right training, for the right job, and for regions creates data ecosystems that generate good and precise statistics on what skills are needed, what trainings they should fund, and how to target the appropriate people. UX can be on two sides. Either you're on one existing platform that you use, where you have your data. Let's say we work a lot on skills data, so you are on your university's platform, you have several data there, and then you can have integrated in that a visions pop-up that would say, you have this and this data inside your university, you can share it towards this other skills platform that will bring you more insights about what jobs you can do with those skills, what trainings you can get, etc. So you will have this little agent that would pop up, console you on your data and ask for your consent, and if you provide your consent, you can be redirected to the other platform and start using your data in that other platform. That will generate new data, and that in the same way you can share with even a third party. So that's between existing or connected platform to the visions operator. And then you have another side of it, is that you can create, it's not mandatory, but you can create a visions account where in a central place you can connect all your services and find all your consents from a central place. On a very pragmatical level, it's a tool, it's an API for this consent, identity, interoperability management that the data sources and the data users connect to. They connect their existing information systems to that API that is able to share the data between them based on consent and handle in identity and interoperability questions. So that's a very technical answer. There is the legal and governance framework. There is a nice basis and framework of the CITRA rulebook that creates a contractual framework between, as we said, data sources, an operator like Vision, data users, and that they collectively define what data can be shared for what purpose, what are the standards that we want to be respected, what kind of checklist should the organizations that access data respect to access the data, what kind of processings are allowed or not. And this kind of builds the governance of the network and the different roles. Who provides what data to what purpose, who can access what data for what purpose, and of course, what happens when somebody does not respect the rule, what happens if we want to add a new partner in the network. So that is more of the legal, let's say, governance part, which is quite complex, because even though we have this contractual framework, there's a lot of different things to take into account, like sectoral rules, cross-sectoral rules, general regulations, also the contract. And what's another relationship, contractual relationship, is the contract between the person and Visions and their operator. What responsibilities do we have towards the person? So in GDPR, we have something that a person can mandate a third party to represent them and exert their rights on their data on their behalf. But also we're talking about fiduciary duty, and how are we obliged, in a sense, as Visions, as an operator, to always have the best interest of the person as objectives. So this is our contractual frameworks we're working on, because lots of those do not exist. And that will build effectively the trust in the end, is to have some kind of standard clauses, standard obligations, standard governance frameworks where organizations can jump on and trust that everybody in the network respects them, and appropriate data sharing agreements and contracts be built. If we get back to the structural separation in intermediaries and data users, that means that the intermediary itself will not produce any services on the data that it shares or that it allows access to. Meaning, if I take again the skills example, Visions will not match a person with the right training or job offers. It will allow training and job platforms to access the right data to provide that match. So it limits a bit the business model you can do. Also, if we take again the data governance side in Europe, they said that you cannot gain more money as a data intermediary if more data is shared. That seems a bit logical, because if you get more money if data is shared, then you're not really neutral on data sharing. You would be incentivized for people to share more data, when in fact you need to represent their rights and their wills and their best interest. So the model we have is that first it's B2B, meaning that the organizations plugging in pay a fee to use the API based on the number of people consents are managed. And this does not vary if people say yes or no on the consent, and it's support on services on identity, on consents, on legal support, on interoperability, and so on that they pay. It's free for people. It's kind of a three-layered approach, very connected to the standards, of course. The first layer is a technical layer, to have precise mechanisms, technical mechanisms, cryptographic mechanisms that ensure that data is only accessed when a consent is valid, that ensures that it's the right person that has given the consent, that it's the right organization that has accessed the data, that when a consent is revoked, let's reverse mechanisms, either data can be no longer accessed, of course, but also working on deletion and so on. Then you have a legal layer, okay, that interconnects the organizations and makes them liable in sense of what they do with the data, and responsible of what they do with the data, and strictly kind of bounds what they can or not do, ties them with general regulations, but also with data protection authorities and so on, so that if somebody does something bad in a sense, and with a bad intent, let's put it that way, and also does not respect those rules, then there can be legal repercussions from all the members of the network and from authorities with fines that can be quite high. And the last layer is what I call a reputational or a business layer, is that if I take my example of a skills data ecosystem, okay, you have all this interconnected and skills access and profiles. You're a training organization. At some point, it's a network effect. You need to be on the network to still be able to do business, because competitors will be on the network, and being on the network means very concretely having better leads, business leads, on who can do your training. And if you're not on it, then you're one train behind, because you don't have the most up-to-date and precise and in real-time data. So once you're on the network, and through the two previous layers, you can, in a sense, be kicked out. Then, once you're kicked out, everybody would be informed that, well, this organization, for this and that reason, was kicked out. Users will be informed as well, and will be given the chance to easily putting a complaint with the Data Protection Authority, meaning this organization has breached this and that, and you can put a complaint. So for any organization, it becomes quite, let's say, hard and stupid to breach the rules for reputational and business reasons as well. That's more on the, let's say, a punitive side. On the preventing side, we've got strong governance with the organizations that say an organization that wants to join needs to respect a certain criteria, have some certifications, and be able to prove those. And so before joining, you will have to prove a certain number of things. Not anybody can join, but rules are fair, meaning it's the same rules applied to everybody.